Sorry, I've not been about much recently, have I? Well, start off there was Christmas, and I was like take a couple of weeks off work for Christmas, so I didn't do any videos then or anything. And then it's that week between Christmas and New Year, which no one works that week, right? Unless you have to, so do as little as possible. And then last Thursday, Boulder tried to burn itself down. I don't live right in Boulder, but I live on the outskirts, and my farm was about a mile out from having to be evacuated. And so all of Thursday and Friday was trying to work out how we'd load up horses, evacuate horses and other farm animals, running around trying to catch barn cats and coral them up into cat carriers. Had to, anyway, so that was a massively stressful time. And then it snowed, and it didn't just snow a bit, it snowed feet. And so I had to dig the farm out from the snow. And then it froze. We got minus 20 Celsius. It's fucking cold. So then all my pipes burst. So I was dealing with burst pipes Sunday and Monday. And now we just had another snowstorm. We've got another 2 foot of snow. So it's been kind of busy. Having said that, I will admit, although all these things happened and it's been kind of busy, it's not like I didn't have any downtime. I actually have plenty of downtime. And my way of dealing with things when stuff is very stressful is to spend as little time as I can when I have the downtime doing fuck all, basically. So in that time, I achieved watching, I think I got through 4 seasons of Line of Duty in 4 days. That's a fucking achievement, isn't it? So it's not like I was running my ass off the whole time. I did spend a lot of time just sitting on my ass watching AC-12 try and get corrupt coppers. And I'm so happy that I got to spend that time doing that. All right, now to your questions. Rahma says, how to deal with eating disorder. That's the kitten. Eating disorder coach in my country, as all of them think obesity is bad and that I'm eating too much now. Side note, I have been 3 years in recovery with the extreme hunger until now, never stop eating. Well, you don't have to work with an eating disorder recovery coach. Millions of people recover without working with anyone. So I'm not saying that that's ideal either, but if you can't find somebody that's going to help you, coaches are supposed to help you. If you can't find somebody that's going to help you, you don't have to work with anyone. The other thing is because of the internet, which, don't get me started on the internet, there are pluses and minuses to the internet, honestly, and sometimes I wish it had never been invented. But that aside, because of the internet, you don't have to work with a coach in your country, do you? You can work with a coach in any country because we do internet calls. So there's always going to be somebody out there that you can find that's going to help you. And that's the whole thing about recovery coaching, is you need to find a coach that's going to help you. You don't have to agree with what everybody in the world says, but you got to find somebody that aligns with your values and get help from them. Hey, James, how are you? I hope you had a good New Year and stuff. Happy New Year, Happy New Year, Happy New Year. I think I'm eating myself to death, but I very much doubt it. Hi. Oh, yeah, someone else saying you can get a coach outside of your country. Exactement. So Cheryl says, hello, I'm a little stuck in recovery. How do I commit fully? I'm doing like 7%, not gaining weight. Well, you're the only person that can get yourself to commit to anything, isn't it? But here's the thing. I've never worked with a person with an eating disorder who wasn't very, very stubborn and who wasn't extremely good, actually, at doing what they said they were going to do once they committed to doing it. So it's your fear of weight gain that's stopping you properly commit to doing it. I mean, you know that, right? And if you're not 100% committed, then I hate to say it, but you're not really doing recovery, because it is to get yourself recovered. You do have to be 100% committed to recovery, because as soon as that 30% of the day where you're restricting, you're not eating unrestricted, you're engaging in body weight suppression activities, that 30% of the day you are reinforcing your fear of weight gain. And it's your fear of weight gain that we have to get to go away if you want to fully recover. You can't rewire fear of weight gain whilst you're reinforcing it, which is why I am so kind of a stickler on you have to absolutely do it. And so I hate to tell you, but you're sort of fucking around at the moment if you're doing it 70%. And there isn't some magic thing that's going to get you to commit other than you. You're the only one that can do that. Just make the decision and then hold yourself to it. Liliane says, I was wondering if you could talk about courage and being able to go all in without restriction. For example, tonight I had dinner, but I've been dreaming of ordering burgers and pizzas, but never brave. Well, just because you've never been brave in the past doesn't mean that you can't be brave. You can. You really can. You're afraid. And it's your fear that's stopping you doing those things that you know you want to do, like ordering burgers and pizzas. And if you want to recover, being brave isn't an option. And you've got to get it out of your head that brave is this quality that some people have and some people don't. We can all be brave when we need to. We all are brave when we have to be. And so your ability to be brave and to do the things that you're afraid of, you are just as able as I was or anybody else who's done recovery. There's nothing different between you and me when it comes down to how brave we are or not. It's just about making the decision to do it, making the decision to be brave, because that is actually a decision. Like, being brave is not something that you're just gifted with or skilled with. It's actually a decision that you make. I'm going to be brave and I'm going to hold myself to it and I'm going to do it. And you have the ability to do that just like I did. I promised you that you do. And so I know it sounds like a really simplistic thing to say, but the way that you are brave is by making the decision to be brave and getting on and doing it regardless of how afraid you feel, because you're going to feel afraid. You have fear of weight gain. So of course you're going to feel afraid at the prospect of eating pizzas and burgers and all those things. Like, you wouldn't have an eating disorder if you didn't feel afraid. So let's just expect you to feel afraid and know that you're going to feel afraid, but you've already made the decision. I'm going to do it regardless of how afraid I feel. And that's how we do it. We don't try and bypass the fear. We recognize the fear, we acknowledge the fear, and we say, I'm going to do this regardless of the fear. And that's what you have to do. Nutty says, hey Tab, eating 3 meals and 3 snacks, but how to consistently challenge fear foods without dipping back into reasonable, safe food in between. Don't have or not in tune with extreme hunger cravings. So what I did is, well, it sounds like you're challenging yourselves, your fear foods. So you're asking, like, how can I consistently challenge the fear foods without then going back to a safe food? I actually found it easier to be very consistent with challenging fear foods. I found that mentality of every time I eat, it's going to be something that scares me. Every time I'm going to freak myself out. Go, 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 go mentality. I found that a lot easier than, say, at dinner time, I'm going to eat something scary, but the rest of the day I'm going to eat something safe. Because what's happening there is when you're eating safe foods, you're just kind of like not in, and you're in a bit of a passive mode. You're passive, you're kind of going along with it. You're not attacking recovery. And so usually when we're in that passive mode, we're actually in defensive mode. And if you want to overcome an eating disorder, you have to attack it. And so there's a difference between kind of like, I'm defending myself from my eating disorder. I'm eating my meal plan. I'm eating my meals. I'm just kind of holding the fort, so to speak. I'm not allowing myself to restrict anymore. I'm not allowing myself to do any more body weight suppressant activities. I'm just defending it. There's a big difference between defense and I'm fucking going to kill my eating disorder, attacking it. And I found it so much easier to get into attack mode and stay in attack mode than like, oh, I'm in defense mode all day and then suddenly I attack for one meal in the evening and then I'm back in defense mode. Well, you're not going to get anywhere. It's easier to just get into attack mode and then stay in attack mode and be like, what can I eat that's scary? Go, 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 find it. It scares me? Fucking eating it. Something else. Right, that scares me. I'm going to go and eat that too. Like, when you're doing that, when you're really attacking it, you feel like you're more in control, because you are, than when you're defensive. It's true, really, in anything like football or anything like that. It's always the team that's on the attack that have the control, usually because they've got the ball. The defense ones are just sort of sitting there waiting to be attacked. Being in defense is stressful. find that a lot harder, actually. I much prefer being in attack. Anyway, but that is my advice on that one. Oh, sorry, it's jumped, and so now I'm going to be out of order with these damn questions. I'm trying to get back to. There's a load of questions from. Okay, do you believe in counting calories, macros is disordered? Well, yeah. I have friends that do this, but they say it's not a disorder. Well, they might not have an eating disorder, but I still think it's disordered to count calories and macros. But then there's a lot of things that I think are disordered that most people think are normal. So a lot of people live with body weight suppression activities. They're not necessarily at the threshold of having a full-blown eating disorder, but that's because a lot of body weight suppression activities are very normalized in our culture. Most people in our culture probably do think it's normal to count calories at this point because the government insists on plastering calorie information over everything. And so I can see somebody's point of view if they're like, I count calories, but I don't think it's disordered because, well, we live in a disordered society. There's a quote that I really like. It's like something about it's not a sign of health to be well adjusted to a sick society. I can't remember how that quote goes exactly, but it's the same sort of thing. To be well adjusted to a disordered society doesn't mean that you're not disordered just because everybody's disordered. It's still disordered. I mean, what the fuck did humans do before calories existed, before we'd actually worked that out? I guess we just didn't worry about it. Would have been nice, right? And then macros, I think macros have only been around about 100 years. I mean, not that they've only been around, but the discovery of them as a thing has only been around about that long. So for the vast majority of humans' existence on Earth, nobody knew about these things or thought about them or cared about them. It just makes you wonder, isn't it, how we evolved to exist. Anyway, I've only got time for a couple more. So Brittany says, I'm a healthcare professional and frustrated with the healthcare system's fat phobia. You and me both, Brittany. Why do you think that more educated professionals aren't aware of the migration flea famine theory? Well, because it's not mainstream. And a lot of so if you think about it from how medicine and healthcare has evolved, and especially the line of mental health, actually the way that the field of mental health has evolved, things like psychotherapy, it's actually quite scary. Sort of the physical side of healthcare, well, that's less scary how that's evolved because you can either see it either works or it doesn't. Like things like someone breaks their leg and patching that up, like that has taken a really kind of, it either worked or it didn't path, and somebody's leg either healed or it didn't. And so the way that that's evolved is quite straightforward. But the problem with the field of mental health, and not just mental health, but the more scientific side of, the theory side of medicine, all aspects of health, is that a lot of things in the past, because people have had less scientific tools and way to measure things, they just gone by what seemed right at the time. They've done the best. They've made the best decisions at the time with the information that they've had. Now, that doesn't mean that that was correct. It just means what they did at the time. It's a bit like, I'm trying to think of now, for example, but there are many examples in healthcare where at the time, that's what they've done because that's the best they knew. And since then, we've got, that's absolutely crazy that happened. Like germs, before people understood that germs existed, hospitals were rife with them and physicians never washed their hands. And now you look at that and go like, what? How is that even possible? How could anybody have thought that that was an okay thing to do, to not wash your hands? It's so obvious, but it's not obvious really, unless you have the knowledge that we've accrued. So what that meant in terms of the mental health field is that when mental health, the field was emerging as a field, there are only a few people working in that field, and most of them were Freud. And so a lot of the mental health stuff that we even have today, so far on, is still based on Freud's observations. That's one person. Freud decided that people with eating disorders were hysterical, or, women are hysterical just in general. Freud decided that only women have eating disorders. Like there's all this stuff that, and I'm blaming Freud, but it wasn't just him, but these main sort of few characters that were right at the top in the emerging field of mental health just made all of these decisions. And it was based on their theories, and their theories were based on their lives. And most of them were old white men. And so they were they were observing mental health conditions in people, and they were coming up with theories that to them at that time made sense. They were doing their best with the information that they had. And then these people went on to pass that information on and to write books on that information. And so because these people were then reputable and considered gods of mental health at this time, because no one else was even understanding what it was, or it was an emerging field, then whatever their thoughts and opinions got passed on to the next generation of people coming up in that field. And that still happens. And the big problem that underlies all of it is that once a belief system has become established in a human culture, it's really, really difficult to shift it. And I always use religion as the example, but it is the best example of belief systems. When people are brought up in a culture of being told this thing is just true about the world, you don't need to question it, you can take it as fact, a lot of people do that. And so if you think in your own schooling that you've had as a medical professional, all of the things that have been taught to you have come from what other people have believed. And there lieth the problem. If other people believe something to be true, a lot of the time it doesn't matter whether it is true or not. They believe it to be true and they pass it on as if it's true. And we are all guilty of that. And so then this belief system just becomes ingrained in the culture. And then it's incredibly hard to shift. So pick any religion in the world that you don't agree with, not your religion, but one that you don't agree with. Pick that religion, and then off you go. Go to that culture and go to where those people worship or pray, and try and convince them that their religion isn't actually valid. Good luck with that. It doesn't matter how much science you take. It doesn't matter how many other theories you take. It doesn't matter about your own lived experience. It doesn't matter how much proof you can offer them. They're still not going to believe you. And so when things like Sean Geisinger's adaptive famine theory comes through and says, oh, that thing that we thought for quite a long time, that eating disorders are all psychological, well, that might not be true. And people don't like their belief systems to be questioned in that way. Because say if you're a therapist and someone's coming along and saying, oh, eating disorders, they might actually be more biological than psychological. And for years, you've been a therapist for 30 years, and for years you've been treating people with psychoanalysis for their eating disorder. And then someone comes along and says, oh, that thing you've been doing all your life, that was wrong. Hackles go up. People don't like to be told that. And that is the problem. We're trying to change minds. And so that is my answer to why I think that more educated professionals aren't aware of the migration adaptively famine theory, because Shan couldn't even get that published for years. She couldn't even get it peer reviewed. She was rejected for years. And it's taken people from the ground up, people like you and me that have read that and gone, that sounds familiar, to actually start to bring it to the forefront. It was not done from the top end. It was done from the ground up, or is being done from the ground up. All right, one more. Why do you think so many people, this is Hillary, why do you think so many people with eating disorders are vegetarian? Is it because a lot of us are socially conscious people? Is it most likely an eating disorder symptom? Hey. Oh, don't make me go into the whole vegan vegetarian thing. I always get so much hate when I talk about this. Did you know that I was vegan when I had an eating disorder? I was vegetarian too. I was any Anne that you could be, I had when I had an eating disorder. I would class myself as an animal lover. I live on a farm. I spend my whole day shoveling shit. I still eat animals. The two things to me do not have to be separate, because I can be an animal lover, but I'm still a human, and I'm in a human body and my body is a mammal. And a lot of the animals actually that I look after eat other animals. And I don't think that humans, I don't feel like we're that much different from other mammals. I think we like to think that we are, but I don't think that we are. I also think it's true that I don't want to get into too many of the statistics and all of that crap, but I do also think it's true that being a vegetarian honestly causes just as much harm to animals as eating meat does in many cases, because those crops have to come from somewhere and animals have to be displaced in order for those crops to come. Take, for example, Mustang horses, to which I have actually trained a few wild horses so that they can then be adopted out and rehabilitated into homes. The reason that we have such a problem with Mustang horses being corralled and rounded up and taken off their lands is because people want to use those lands for crops. So you could say, well, that decision displaced a load of animals, killed a load of animals, but is it that those animals don't matter as much because they're growing crops and you prefer to be vegetarian? So you can argue it a million ways, can't you? And I really am not interested in getting into that right now. But what your question really was, is it because a lot of people with eating disorders are more socially conscious or not? And I do not believe that people with eating disorders are more socially conscious than other people. I believe that our eating disorders latch onto that very conveniently as a way to put another obstacle between you and eating without restriction. It is very, very difficult to be able to eat anything at any time if you can't eat a huge section of the available food. It makes restriction more convenient. And most of us, when we have an eating disorder, hate being told that. You try telling me that when I had an eating disorder, I would have argued your face off. I would have thrown all the statistics in at you that supported my point of view at the time. I would have told you it was so much healthier to eat vegetarian. I was actually doing this for the health of my body and the health of all of the animals around me. And it was just a load of bullshit. Because at the same time, I was drinking 0-calorie Fanta or whatever it was, which is not a healthy product. Like, sugar is healthier than that stuff. Normal Fanta is healthier than that stuff. I think that we all know that deep down, but we still make that argument that what we're doing in our terms of restriction for our eating disorders is actually about health, when it's nothing to do about health, and it's everything to do about body weight suppression. And that is the cold, hard truth for a lot of us. And we hate to admit that because it just seems so vain and empty, doesn't it? You know, being an eco-warrior and saying, I'm restricting food because it's better for the planet and animals and for my health, that's kind of like, feels like it has some substance. Whereas having to admit, I'm just doing it all because I'm fucking afraid of weight gain, that just feels really, really, really hollow. And we hate to admit that. But for the vast majority of us, it is what is deep down underneath there, the truth. I will also say to that I do believe that you can fully recover being vegetarian, but you have to eat a fuckload of cheese. And with that, I'm going to go. I'm back on track. I will definitely be doing more lives and more videos and things like that. Okay. Really nice to see you all. I hope that you all had a better start to the year than I did. And even if you had a shit one as well, you've got to keep your sense of humor and laugh about it, haven't you? Watch more Netflix. Bye.